All right, this is candidate number 7 with the parent encounter. And welcome, Mrs. Johnson, to the school. We have Troy was actually just sent to the office, which I think this might be a perfect opportunity for us to get together, try and problem solve and figure out what's happening. Um, so to kind of start off the meeting, Mrs. Johnson, if you don't mind, I just kind of want to hear from Troy. I know we had some concerns with Mr. White and just some general concerns in the community over some thoughts that have been coming out of your advocate group. Mr. White just sent Troy to the office with a complaint about him not wanting to switch to an assigned seat. So Troy wanted to hear your perspective. You know, I have to take a wild guess and say this probably just isn't based off of you not wanting to change a seat, and sort of want to see what else is happening. Um, and then, so Mrs. Johnson, now that Troy has shared a little bit of his concerns, I very much appreciate his honesty. Um, would you mind just sharing with me some of your concerns that you brought in today, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm not surprised that Mr. White has once again sent my son out of his classroom. My son is extremely bright in advanced math classes, advanced PSSA scores since, third grade. And yet again, he is labeled as high energy, disrespectful, disruption to the class when all he wants to do is engage and share his learning. So we talked to Troy about raising his hand. We've talked to Troy about being, respectful. Now we're at the point where it's like, just put your head down, buddy, and just do your work and get it done. There's absolutely no reason why my son is being sent out of class day in, day out, or put into the back of the room because he is trying to engage. That Mr. White has not contacted me. I have emailed him. I have sent him Schoology messages. I have tried to have Troy advocate for himself appropriately. Um, and I'm tired of him, Mr. White, not connecting with my son. He has no time. If you were to ask him, what does Troy want to do when he grows up, or what's his favorite hobby, Mr. White could not explain that. He could not give a good answer. At parent teacher conferences, he put his little QR code up on the wall and he wasn't there. So I get it, emergencies happen, but then I followed up and sent questions and still nothing. It is now back from holiday break, winter break, and still no response from Mr. White. So he's sending kids out. My kid is getting lost educational time. His peer groups, his friends are like, man, I don't know why you have a target on your back. And yet again, he's being classified as a disruptive kid when he's a really neat kid and he doesn't have problems in his other classes. So, how is it that I have an advanced student who is failing science, who keeps getting kicked out of class, and when he wanted to do his assigned seat, no one else had an assigned seat? Troy does not feel like a part of that community. And I just feel like we've been dismissed. And for whatever reason, Troy now has that target on his back, and Mr. White is not going to give him instruction so that he can get a better outcome. It's beyond me. This goes back even from, the very beginning of school. My son does not have ADHD. He does not have a behavioral problem. He is involved in extracurricular activities in the community. He's constantly trying to volunteer and be a strong student. And then I have yet to see teachers engage with him. Like I just learned about gifted screeners. Why was my son never screened for gifted? Because he's a boy, because he's multiracial, because he has high energy. Like, figure out how to teach a child. Look at the whole child. Don't just expect him to sit quietly and be in class. He's got a lot to say. Use it. And, Mr. White not reaching out to me or responding to me is just, it is despicable that we have this in this school. I don't understand. Our students deserve to have their assets and strengths be, projected and enhanced and not diminished and expect to just be quiet and say, yes, sir. But Troy needs to be respectful. We'd say that to him all the time. But now we're trying to change his personality because we have a teacher unable to utilize his strengths for better. I don't know what to say. I mean, he's getting sent out all the time.
I certainly appreciate the perspective, especially reiterating with Troy, the respect factor. Because this situation could easily turn into obviously arguments between the teacher and the student. So I do appreciate your support there. Um, and I am very sorry to hear the perspective of Troy now, as painted having a target on his back. We certainly, as a school community, want to be fostering the relationships with kids, not just in a couple classrooms, but all the classrooms. Um, so now that I kind of have a little more background from your perspective and what's going on, just to address the gifted screening, after hearing some of the parent concerns in the community, this is one of the things that I want to bring up at a staff meeting. Kind of what are our what do we already have in place? What are some things that we might be missing in terms of when it comes to a more diverse net being cast over our gifted and honor students? And kind of like you were saying, learning to appreciate the things our kids have to say, um, even if from our perspective it's coming out maybe very rapidly and quickly, but harnessing that and utilizing that more in what we're considering a gifted child, instead of stifling it and expecting them to sit quietly, kind of like you were alluding to. Um, I think from this point with Mr. White, I would love to get his perspective on this whole situation now that you've laid out what your concerns are. Um, Honestly, as the principal of our school, uh, I don't like to avoid conflict. I think this can be used in a way that will, um, you know, kind of create a new solution for this relationship and try and move forward from here, with Troy and Mr. White. I truly am just hoping that, we've developed a staff here of people who I think when they hear something's not going well, they will want to fix it and want to do better. So I'm hoping that's the case here. My proposal would be first and foremost, getting Troy set up for a gifted screener, especially now that you brought that to our attention, that that's something you're interested in. And I apologize that was, he didn't get screened before. Um, I also want to I'll set up a meeting, sit down with Mr. White, bring your concerns to him. And I want to get his perspective as well. And then, if you don't mind, potentially, could we set up another meeting where all of us are involved, Troy, yourself, and Mr. White, and see if we can't figure out a solution to move forward in math class? Does that sound like something you would be okay with?
I would be fine with that. I think that, Troy has to be at the table and be at the center of this conversation. It's not, me versus Mr. White. This is, trying to make sure that there's no harm to my son or to other students with, poor classroom management or maybe not understanding people have different needs and different strengths and instead of just, treating them as outcasts. So I think that that's important, but I would say that, I have tried to engage with Mr. White. I haven't been in your office because, I respect teachers. I respect what they do as their profession. And I just don't understand the disrespect coming to me as a mom um, is just very hard to take. So I do appreciate that you would be with us to have that conversation because respect goes both ways, and it's very hard for me as a parent to keep telling somebody, and sending them into that environment when he's being dismissed and then being sent out. It's the half of the year starting the second semester, and I feel like he's had lost educational time. Um, and I get so if I have a child, if my son's being sent out, that teacher should be reaching out to me. I shouldn't have to like go through my son, try to like set him up for success and hear nothing from the teacher. And that's my concern. So I appreciate that you're addressing it. I'm
Mhm.
sure that he's not the only one, and that you've got a lot of work to do on your side to try to better the outcomes of our kids, not just, the ones that are the ideal student, because they're all awesome kids. You have an awesome group of student body. And so I just really hope that your teachers are taking in what you're giving them as, learning and development, because it just can't continue this way.
Right, right. And I completely agree with you. Again, back to that, I have some ideas after the school board meeting that was attended. I have some ideas for our staff, potential staff developments to address some of the concerns that were brought up within the community, including a situation like this with Troy. Um, I'd also like to reach out to your group and think maybe we can brainstorm some ways, whether it's an after school event, in school activities, like what can we do as a school um, to bring a more like multicultural type of activities to help us appreciate the diversity in our community that we have. um, and sometimes I feel like that helps strengthen the connections between our teachers and our students as well, when they have that background understanding. That's something I definitely want to look into, and would look to partner with the parent group as well,
Mhm.
um, to help with that. Um, in terms of our next meeting, I will certainly reach out after I've had a chance to discuss this with Mr. White, um, bring all of our ideas back to the table and all of our viewpoints for sure, um, and see if we can't integrate something new to move forward. Because as you said, Troy's a very intelligent young man, and my goal is to never have kids out of the room losing instructional time. That's what we're here for. We're here to better your kids. We're here to make them feel safe and a part of a community. So that'll be the ultimate goal of that meeting, is to leave with a plan of how can we get back to that. Um, do you have any other questions or concerns, for Troy, school wide in general?
No, I think that thankfully he has a good peer group. He's got a good friend group, because he's not feeling connected to some of the staff, in particular, Mr. White. So, and he's got because of that, he's got some protection. So it's pretty. I'm appreciative that you want to engage in the parent group, because we have a lot of ideas ourselves, and to partner with you is going to, I think, be better for all.
Mhm.
We're not looking at just trying to be negative and tear down the district, tear down the school. We just really appreciate that you're willing to speak and come to the table, because then we'll continue to partner and work with you. So thank you for being willing to come to our next meeting. And again, it's not just about Troy. I'm looking at everybody in this.
Mhm.
It's just unfortunate that my son is firsthand experiencing this. So thank you again. Thank you for being willing to meet with me just by chance. I was here in the building, and the fact that you brought me in, I just really appreciate it. Because that's showing me that you know what's going on in your school. You know that who's in your building at times, even when we're like volunteering or just dropping by. So thank you for that, because if it would have played out differently, I think that I'd still be sitting at home without any information from Mr. White, and just an
Sure.
office referral coming
Yep.
through.
Okay. Well, I definitely appreciate your time, and I will let you know when we can schedule that meeting, hopefully for the follow up.
Okay.
I look forward to bringing us all to the table then.
All right. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Have a good rest of the day.
You too. Thank you.